Yeah, and what I was saying is that society is a stream, a river that is, running constantly. All the prison service acts as is a grate in that river to remove some of those things that we may not like or want in the stream for a particular time. But we are not responsible for what we receive. So society is where we are producing the criminals, we are producing the rapists, we are producing the kidnappers, the drug dealers, listen, the violent robbers. Society as a whole needs to start to take ownership of the fact that the great that is in the stream, that is there pulling things out, and I could even say the great is the entire judiciary, is simply dealing with things that the stream has given to it. I don't see people going and lock up anybody walking down the street. So the question is, there's a deeper, and we don't have time for that today, but there's a deeper moral and ethical question that needs to be dealt with, where the public needs to understand that when we start from children, and children are ignored or abused or not given what they should, and then we don't have a proper social network of safety net, so people keep falling through the cracks, and then you talk about their crimes of opportunity. And in a time of recession, here we have the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, which already is under supported by the state, I will say that, going into a recessionary period where crime is notably going to increase, and we are going to be have to deal with that increase. And then the backdrop, our resources, our assistance, our structures are barely able to cope and manage with what we already have.
Under-supported by the state is what you said, and you speak in the context of resources made available for corrective measures. Am I correct?
Correct is right.
All right. My guest this morning is the General Secretary of the Prison Officers Association. He's Gerald Gordon. Thank you so much for joining us. We are talking about a situation that's at the forefront of the nation right now, which is the issue of the prison officers and the manner in which, people interpret a tragedy, because an attack on a police officer is an attack on the law-abiding system of the country. It's an attack on everybody.
Good.
And I think if we internalize it that way, then we can better understand the dispatch with which we must find a solution to
Correct,
this.
is right.
I want to go into the area of something that's in the public arena. I think it minimizes, the contribution, and it puts the discussion in a different place. But it is in the public arena, and I must inquire of you. People ask the question if a lot of these officers are behind bars ordered hits are in fact any part of a behind bars facilitation and deals made with the prisoners or the remandees that have gone bad.
Directly, I will say no. And I would want to add that that statement, that question, further solidifies the point of that way that society seeks to separate themselves from what the real issue is. The real issue is that there is no respect for authority. And if the authority figures in our society are under attack, listen, what does that leave for us? So the public tries to rationalize. It must be something. It cannot simply be that this gentleman, this man, was just a prison officer. That is why he was attacked. Something else is the cause.
Not acceptance that it could be just that the system is broken.
The system is broken, correct, is right.
Let us talk some solutions. In the short term, because cost is going to be an issue going forward. You say limited resources being given to the prison service is one question. Now it is much more dire in the sense of revenue not being there. So it is more of a premium in planning solutions and implementing recommendations. The cost is going to be involved. Before we get to the cost elements that would be involved here and the potential cost for them, let's talk about things that will not cost the nation money right now, or a lot of money, that your organization, if you have identified any things that can be done to assist the prison officers right now, that does not come with a big price tag.
We have been asking for the relocation. The houses are already there. The place is already there. And we were well on our way to having a number of safe houses handed over to us. We have been pleading to have a number of officers who currently reside in particular areas to be relocated. And that is not going to cost the government anything. In fact, the officers still have to pay for. We are not asking for the houses for free. We understand it's going to come at a cost, whether it's rent to own or whether it's an all-out mortgage. That's not going to cost anything. When we talk about the government legislative agenda, and it speaks to that protection of the prison officer, how legislation doesn't cost any great amount of money. It will cost some time, it will cost some research, but we need to move to the point where we are looking at creating an environment to have people discouraged, highly discouraged, from attempting to carry out an attack on an agent of the state.
Let us see if we understand this. You're saying that houses that are already built, part of the government social program, houses that are already there, you're asking for the relocation of high-risk of prison officers in high-risk areas. Am I clear on that?
Correct, is right.
And you're asking for that to be done at the expense of the general need, really.
Yes.
Is that the argument you have heard? I'm sure you've heard that.
Because the house is already there. We are not asking for them to build houses. And in fact...
And you're asking for these officers to give up their existing premises. They're going to be relocated. In other words, where they are right now, does that property become the property of the state? We
had a meeting with officers are ready to go. They are ready to pack up and leave once given the opportunity. The fact of the matter is that, as I said before, they are prepared to pay. We're not asking for it for free.
And I'm asking, is this an additional house, or they're prepared to give up the ones they have that they own right now, and the arrangements being made?
A lot of them, some of them are living in family properties.
I see.
You know, the brother living upstairs, they living downstairs. That sort of arrangement. Some of them don't, but a lot of them have been born and have grown in these areas.
Identified, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Prison officers in deemed high-risk areas.
I would say, based on the figures that we have, around 60.
60. All right. The call for guns as part of a solution, which I understand there is a disposition to give them out more freely. I understand. I don't know if, in fact, that is so. That is not really a solution. It sounds like a Band-Aid to me.
Like a?
Band-Aid almost. Because, I mean, handing you a gun and saying, go ahead and take care of it.
And that is fully understood. What we continue to say is that all of the resources of the state needs to be applied to give the individual officer an opportunity to have some semblance of peace in his existence while he continues to work. And I mean, people talk about firearms. The association has always said it. We don't expect them to bring a boxer gun in the jail and just say, that is highly irresponsible. What we are saying is that there's a combination of things that needs to be done. I just want to go back to the housing. Right now, we are in the process of looking for lands to purchase, because we are not only advocating on what give us. One of the reasons that we have written to the Minister of Housing since the 16th of September 2015, days after the election, was with a view to finding out what sort of partnership we could create, because we understand the limitations with HDC. It said it's not that our needs are more important than everyone else's.
That's the point I sort of alluded to earlier. Yes.
Yeah, but what we are saying is that, listen, we have some ability and we may just need some help. How far or what would the government be able to do to help us realize and put officers in a position where they could be in a safe place? How do we do? So, it needs to be made clear, we are not about begging for handouts.
The latter proposal is not without cost. It is at reduced cost, because if you purchase land, infrastructure and so on must be put in place. So there's a cost associated with that.
Correct is right.
And you are cognizant of that. That is in the short term. Any other areas that in the short term, before we get into the larger one, because this area of having a community set up And you feel that those who are aggrieved or perceive some grouse or something will be less inclined to attack an officer living in an officer community. Is that generally the feeling?
And this is why I say the answer, some of the solutions, is a multi-pronged approach. Anytime you look at it in isolation, okay, they give them houses there in one area.
It does not.
No, it doesn't. But as part of a bigger construct, you see where it could pay dividends for everyone involved. So it's not, we can't, how to say, give a passing mark for one part of it. Just like saying, give everybody guns. We know that wouldn't solve the problem. Okay, move everybody to one area. That is not going to solve the problem.
Many subs towards the total is
correct.
What
is right.
Saying. I got that. One of the areas that you mentioned, and I want to stay the housing. We got that part. I want to go into the area of the judiciary because you mentioned that when we started talking about decreasing that population in remand. Has there been any discussion between your association? You represent all the prison officers. So has there been any discussion between your organization and your line minister and or an accommodation that includes the judicial arm of Trinidad and Tobago to discuss this issue of speeding up these high-risk detainees' trials or doing something about clearing the backlog? That is a much bigger picture. But my question to you is, if you have identified 10, 15, 20 high-risk detainees who are known to be in association with gangs and ordering hits and making these kind of threats and running the prison, etc. Is there something that can be done to have the judicial arm speed up the hearings for these remandees? Certainly, because you said the problem is not really with your standard prison inmates. You're talking about remand.
But even let's forget the 10 and 20 special people.
Okay,
let's say that. Let's look at the broader issue here. The issue is this. Currently, in the law books, there are alternatives to sentencing based on the crime. A lot of time magistrates are not utilizing these alternatives and choose incarceration. A lot of times you see that, why would you want to place somebody who obviously is destitute in that prison setting? So that is one. Two, there are people who did what we call non-violent offenses. Why don't we have a court that treats specifically with those issues? I am not saying, and you see, these things have been rehashed and spoken about. The judiciary knows what they can do. The question is that they take too long, they don't do it at all, and that is because they are comfortable. I continue to say that there are people who sleep comfortably at night, knowing that the population at Golden Grove remand is probably close to 1,100, where you're talking about 350 it was built basically for 350. And you see, there are things they know that they could do. My question, we have attorneys taking multiple cases. So you have multiple adjustments. The attorney could only be one place at one time. Why are we not limiting this engagement? Letting the attorneys know, listen, you can't have 15 cases. You have a case in north, south, east, west, and south. Come on.
You're not going to get any argument with me in that area, Gerald Gordon. There are a lot of things, including night courts, that can be introduced, and a lot of alternative sentencing that can be considered, and all that you have said. I merely sought to look at the high-risk detainees because as it relates specifically to the safety of prison officers. And I understand in the bigger picture, everybody frustrated will be endangering the lives of prison officers. But if you have heads, if you have groups that, or a clique